So, are female corporate boss really that bad? Seems like a lot of people are talking about it, and there are a lot of nightmare stories. So, in this episode, in this video, we're gonna talk about it and see whether it's that really the case. Let's talk about the stories that we've heard of. So, MJ,
Yes.
any nightmarish story you ever heard of, like people working for a female corporate boss?
So, to be fair, I've heard of more nightmare stories, but I've not actually experienced it myself.
Yeah.
I heard a lot like I mean family members will say like you never get female bosses, right?
That's true.
It's better to have them as peers or below. Part of the reason is because they tend to, I mean, the feedback is that they are more micromanagers, and because they have higher attention to details, right? So that make them more neurotic. So I mean, neurotic is a dirty word, but it's actually a much more psychological term for someone who would experience more negative emotions generally. So when they look at all these details and they think of what could go wrong, then generally you have more negative emotions, right? So that has been the big feedback, but me personally, I don't have bad experience. I do think that there are certain differences which maybe we can go into later on.
I actually have. I'll give my take later on what I think about female bosses because I've actually worked under one specifically.
Yes.
And before I go into my experience about that, how this episode came about is that we were just brainstorming about ideas of what we can do for today's topic. And one of the topic that we find it quite relevant to what we do is just basically how you navigate your life working on things, whether it's business or productivity. And we come across this idea of I actually had a friend who is currently working under a female corporate boss in a very I think it's in the property industry. It's quite a big company. So he would constantly he's just recently been promoted to a manager role, and he has a boss which is a female one. And every day he would ask to go into a room and get scolded.
Damn.
That kind of thing. And any ideas that's being thrown, it would instantly be rejected. I don't know if it's prejudice.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's some kind of biasness, but this friend of mine is the same. This friend of mine was promoted by the very same person.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird how after you get promoted, you are in this situation right now where you're in her room always getting scolded when she is the one that is promoting him. So there are a lot of stories like how he would get sidelined. I don't know if it's like a personality thing where you want that person to shine even more, so you give him more shit.
Wait, there's people who think like that?
There are actually people like that.
Wow.
It's quite toxic though. There are some people who, because they are raised...
Sounds like an excuse to just offload work to someone else.
Okay, so I remember there's this one influencer, right? She was having some kind of controversy, basically NOC, NOC.
Oh yeah, Ryan and Sylvia.
Ryan and Sylvia. And Sylvia,
Now guys, before we move on, just to let you know, we have a mentorship program where you can apply to and work with us so that we can guide you how to build a business on social media. If that's something for you, go ahead and apply. Links are in the description and the comments.
To defend on Silva, basically Silva was saying that she's been raised in a family where if you are getting scolded, it means you are shown love.
I've heard that before, yes.
Yeah. So
the standard one is they will always say like, the reason I'm scolding you is because I care about you. If I don't scold you, means I don't care about you. That's the standard Chinese Asian sort of. I don't know how much of that is genuine. I don't know how much of that is just the guy just wants to rant and...
Correct. And sometimes those people who are scolding, in some ways, they are using that opportunity to kind of stroke their own ego.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't
know, it's a very 50-50 thing.
It's a very 50-50 thing. But I've heard other instances where female bosses are just demanding and they care more about their emotions rather than the end goal, the work being produced at the end. What's your take on that?
Ooh, that is very interesting. I think for sure I think they do look for harmony a lot more. They're probably less comfortable with conflict, but it also depends on the tier. So generally, women who are higher up tend to be much more male-like in that conflict is not necessarily something they look to avoid. But I think, call it middle manager to lower level employees or whatever, tend to, just want to not rock the boat, and they're more okay with that. My experience is that I've managed to work with peers who are women, people under me who are women, and people above me who are women. So you do see that difference actually.
Yeah, I gotta say this thing though. If I happen to be working with a partner, right, who happens to be that crazy female boss we're talking about, I would actually feel more safe and secure and trusting of what she will produce out for me though.
You mean like the more neurotic types, is it?
Correct. If I'm working under such crazy female boss that
It's better for you.
No, if I'm working under, I would absolutely hate it.
Yes, but if she's working for you, it's better.
Correct. Whether if it's a partner,
That's
I
right.
would feel like, wow, this is I feel I can rely.
I think this is a shared experience actually with a friend of mine now that you mentioned, who's a lady also, who herself say that, die she prefers a male boss. And the reason is because, let's say if they chart out a plan, right, a strategy and all that, what the female boss will be doing is, okay, here's the objective, but here are all the steps you have to take. So you got to do this in this way, at this time, and things like that. And then they track it. They're hyper aware of that, and when things don't really go right, then that's when like emotions start to boil over. Whereas at least the good men, right? I'm not saying all men. What they do is they set the objectives, and they're generally more general. They just say, these are the objectives. Here are the resources. Okay, those under them, go and figure it out. And then every week or whatever, they have an update meeting and say, okay, where's the progress? Oh, progress too slow, progress too fast. Then you better pick up the pace. Or, okay, great, keep the pace going. And so, using these two methods, right, you can see they would it would be much lighter and a lot more relaxed, or rather, I wouldn't say more relaxed, but a more self-driven. If you work with a man, you need to be more self-driven. But I think with women, the good part is that because they're so detailed, right? If you are the sort that needs a little bit more hand-holding, I think they're better. Whereas the man will be like, you can't figure this out yourself, things like that.
True. I mean, like, we're not saying all women are behaving like this. We're just saying that we heard more stories about how crazy bosses tend to be of female.
Yeah.
But the boss that I was working under with was actually a fantastic boss who happens to be a female. She is doing exactly what you have just described, where she gave a lot of freedom. You need to figure it out by yourself, and she doesn't give you crazy nightmares. She doesn't ask or call you into a room and stuff like that. So then makes me think is that maybe perhaps what we're perceiving as female crazy bosses, like to begin with, is what you're saying, the neurotic type.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're type
No, but
A.
we know statistically that females are more neurotic, just in general. And they have to be like that because traditionally they raise babies. And to raise a baby, you need to be hyper aware of the details of a baby. When your baby always eat at 2 p.m., suddenly don't want to eat at 2 p.m., then, it will turn out. Whereas if us guys are like, oh, great, it's not eating at 2 p.m., okay, don't have to feed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why they have to be more neurotic, just like evolutionary and genetically. They just have to be like that. And so that gets translated into the workplace where they are hyper detail oriented, which again means it's great for the boss, not so great for the subordinates.
Now we transition over to the last part of this video where maybe we just talk a little bit about to talk about something that will help those people who are in the situation where they don't want to be working under with this boss, or rather things that could help them to cope it easier. What's your take? What's your take when it comes to somebody who is working under a crazy boss and he's not doing so well, she's not doing so well?
Wait, is it a crazy boss in general?
Crazy boss in general.
No, not a crazy female boss, right?
I mean, I don't think we need to say female at this point. Yeah.
I don't know, man. Honestly, like for me, I've never had to deal with a crazy. My experience has been I have to deal with two bosses before. The first one is a boss who is very doesn't have a spine. So it's like almost like an opposite dictator kind.
Yeah.
Right. So I've never had to deal with a dictator. I've never had to deal with like a crazy psycho boss. But I've had to deal with a spineless boss before. And then the second one is the second boss would be someone who is more, what's the word?
Egoistic?
Yeah, I would say that egoistic and a bit more two-faced, let's call it.
Right.
So, I do not have a solution for that, but I mean, the simple one is change department and change job. I don't know how you would manage that relationship.
I think I would agree. I think if you find yourself working under a crazy boss, right, whether it's male or female at this point, I think it's better to just ask yourself, are you actually doing something that fits your goal? Are you happy?
Right.
Are you satisfied? Because if you are not, and yes, you may need to rely on that salary unless you find other side gigs, which if you're interested, you can absolutely check out the link in the description to find out how you can join our mentorship program. But for those, if you are constantly in this situation where you feel that you're being berated, you're being put down, then might as well just change department or change job. Look out for greener pasture, those kind of stuff. I think that basically brings us to the conclusion of this topic. And I think what you just mentioned is quite another good topic that a lot of people want to hear about, which is how do you deal with two bosses? Because I've dealt with two bosses as well.
Yeah, maybe in the next video.
Comment down below what you guys think about this topic, and let us know if you want us to talk about more scary bosses story. And we'll see you guys again next time.